town of Givatayim. Yoram, thanks for joining us. First, let me just ask you, let's look at the short term here. How likely or not is it that in the next week or two, after what happened on Monday, Hezbollah will attempt some other kind of incident along that border?
We'll have to see. I think the next few days will be a test whether Hezbollah intends to close up this episode or to retaliate. I think that we need to be careful because the surrounding of the leaders of this organization threatened to retaliate, allegedly promptly, but the leadership of the organization hasn't spoken since before the attack. So I think if Hezbollah wants to stretch his attempt to attack Israel in a penetrative operation, he will retaliate. If not, he may postpone it to another time, and another time will come.
Right. I just also want to clarify with the retaliation was for the killing of a Hezbollah operative in Syria on an airstrike last week. I do want to ask you, the situation in Lebanon itself is very volatile. You have an economic crisis. You have the coronavirus crisis. It's more and more a political crisis. How might that factor in what Hezbollah's decision will be on whether to take any action at this time?
Of course, it is crucial for Hezbollah decision, but we have to take into consideration that Hezbollah already retaliated in spite of this dire straits that Hezbollah in Lebanon in general is in because of the unprecedented economic crisis. Hezbollah sent a squad to attack an Israeli post. This is a fact, in spite of Hezbollah denial. So it did. Whether he's going to reiterate this attempt or wait for another chance, we'll have to see.
Right. Now, of course, another factor in Hezbollah's decision-making process, maybe the key one, is the influence of Iran. And we are seeing a period of increased tensions with Iran, these mysterious set of explosions across the country. Now Iran conducting this exercise in the Persian Gulf, even using a sort of mock fake U.S. aircraft carrier. What would be the factor in terms of like Iran's involvement? How may they sway Hezbollah's decision-making process at this time?
I think they cooperate. They cooperate very closely. And while going international, Hezbollah is consulting with the Iranians. And also, one can say that they are getting orders from Iran. I think in this situation, Hezbollah has its own merit, its own consideration to take into account. Of course, they are consulting with the Iranians. We don't know whether Iran is harnessing and restraining Hezbollah in this retaliation or pushing them on. I think that one has to take into consideration that the whole episode is about Hezbollah and Nasrallah specifically interest in portraying a new deterrence equation. That's the game. Nasrallah, since last September, decided that he wanted to change the equilibrium and change the equation of deterrence and put Syria as part of this deterrence. And I think Israel is not going to accept it because Israel is going to continue with its operations in Syria in spite of every effort of Hezbollah in order to stop the precision project of Hezbollah and the consolidation of infrastructure in Syria. So we're in for another round in future, if not now, in future.
Well, let me ask you about the point you just raised, because as I said before, it was the killing of that Hezbollah commander supposedly in Syria near Damascus that set off this round, though we hear reports somehow Israel trying to signal he was not the actual target of this strike. But could this cause some second thoughts in the Israeli security establishment? I'm not saying to stop its alleged operations in Syria, but to sort of maybe take a little more care about what the targets are.
I think Israel's determination to intercept the enlargement of the precise long-range missiles is a strategic consideration for Israel. Israel will do almost anything to prevent Hezbollah from getting and compiling such an amount of precise long-range missiles, heavy and loaded ones, in order to prevent from Hezbollah the ability to cause strategic damage to Israel. This is a very crucial strategic element in Israel's overall defense policy. So whether Hezbollah is going to retaliate or not, we'll have to see. Israel showed a lot of restraints while not killing those 4 or 5 or 3 perpetrators who tried to carry out this operation. But Israel has its limits. And if Hezbollah is going to continue or to reiterate the operation soon and kill Israelis, it will suffer the consequences. I think Israel will not be as restrained as it was.
Okay, Yoram Schweitzer of the INSS, thank you for joining us on The Rundown.